My name is Dr. Microaggressions. I am a STEM advocate, engineer, speaker, and writer.
Wipe it down, 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 wipe.
So that video just made me smile so much with all the magic that I see. So awesome. Love it. Welcome everyone to Gals Chat Black Women in STEM Part 2, hosted by Engineering Gals. I am Malika Grayson, and I will be your host. I will be your moderator, and I'm also one of the panelists joined by these lovely ladies. So just a little bit about myself. I got my bachelor's degree in physics in New York at Adelphi University. And before I got my bachelor's degree in physics, I actually grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. So you hear that sweet song accent. I got my PhD in mechanical engineering from Cornell University, where I studied wind energy. So looking at wind turbines in the urban environment. And after I finished my PhD, I went to a rotational program where I shifted from mechanical engineering to systems engineering. And I've done another shift where I now do IT solutions. So I'm currently an applications portfolio manager in the defense industry. So I look at our portfolio apps to see how we can be efficient. Apart from my 9 to 5 job, I am a STEM speaker. So I share my journey through STEM as a Black woman in STEM across various platforms, universities, conferences, because I think it's so important for people who look like me to hear that the journey, even though it's not easy, it's doable, it's possible. And I also have a blog called Black Girls Guide to Grad School. So you can follow me on Instagram. And through that guide, I give tips and advice. And I also review personal statements for free. So if you're thinking about graduate school, if you know someone who's going to graduate school, they can submit their essay. I review it. And that is how we continue to create our pipeline of Black women in STEM. So this is going to be a great event. It's going to be a great panel, and I'm just excited to bring together phenomenal Black women in various engineering fields to discuss the Black experience amidst the fight for justice, not just for what has been happening, but also justice within the STEM community. And to roll into the introductions of our wonderful panelists, I'm going to ask Mbenda to get us started.
Hello, my name is Mbenda Ndour. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science and 2 minors in Math and Africana Studies. I am a full stack software engineer in Los Angeles, California. I am also a pageant queen, so I'm currently Miss Los Angeles US, competing in Miss California US in August, and my platform is bringing young women into STEM, specifically Black women. And I'm a child of immigrants, parents from Senegal, West Africa. I also have a YouTube channel with 26,000 subscribers where I teach people how to get into tech and basically the shortcuts that I wish I had when I was on my journey into tech.
Thank you, Charmaine.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Mabika. I graduated from the University of Westminster in London. I'm from London, UK, in cognitive and clinical neuroscience. In my last year, I went on into thinking about a career in technology. I went on to after I graduated, a couple months after, I was able to secure a job as a software analyst. So as a software analyst, test analyst, I review software, whichever is systems, apps, websites, or different systems that are created by a developer. Make sure there's no defects or bugs, and yeah, so that's been my journey. And aside from that, being a software analyst, I'm also a tech advocate. So I encourage people who had no idea about the different roles in STEM and in technology to look into the different roles there are in tech, especially women and women who are Black as well, because we're underrepresented in the industry. And I'm also a model and a blogger. So on Instagram, I've been featured in Vogue and Black Beauty magazines and different types of editorial magazines. And so I just try and push people into either technology or into just know how to brand and end up being an upcoming model. So that's me.
Thanks, Charmaine. Camille?
Hi, my name is Camille Hogel. I graduated from Florida Atlantic University with my bachelor's degree in business with a specialization in digital marketing. And I graduated with my master's degree, Master's of Science in marketing. So really focusing on the technical aspect of marketing, the programs, omni-channel marketing, the whole experience, end-to-end experience. Currently, I work for ADT in the customer experience department, where I essentially a product manager for our current customer platform. So I work with a lot of engineers, a lot of IT specialists to make sure that we can implement new programs that really help our customers stick and retain better. Besides that, my passion is I just started a blog called The Curly Professional, and it's centered towards the woman of color experience in the corporate place, and pretty much the advice and the insight I wish I would have had starting into my career, how to network, things that your resume may need, how to navigate relationships at work, things of that sort.
Thanks, Camille. And Dr. Corey?
Well, thank you, Malika. I appreciate it. I even have a mug from Malika, if you guys see it. So my name is Corey with a K, not a C. And so I recently defended my PhD at Cornell University in biomedical engineering. I also got my master's there as well. I did my bachelor's in chemistry from Norfolk State University, behold, HBCU. So my research centers around biomaterials and drug delivery, and specifically for treating prostate cancer. But now in my postdoc position, which is my new position at University of Michigan, I will be looking at biocompatible functional particles for targeted drug delivery. So a little bit of a shift. Other than that, I am the diversity chair for Women Doing Science. The Instagram page, we have like over 77,000 followers. We've showcased women from all over the world doing different types of things in their fields. And then I also am on the planning council for STEM Noir, which is a holistic and wellness retreat for Black women in STEM. So I'm a STEM diversity advocate. I always push no matter where I'm at. And so that's just a little bit about me.
Thanks, Corey. And it's so great to hear everything that we all do as STEM advocates, really pushing that diversity, but not just diversity. And we can talk about that a little bit more later on, but representation, right? Because that is a big piece of it. And as we take a step back and we think about that term, Black woman in STEM, the word Black and how we define Black and how it's defined, it's so complex, right? So let's talk about that definition for a bit. And Charmaine, if you could kick things off for us, especially being a Black woman in the UK, and how that term really, what it means to you.
Yeah. So I'm from the UK. I'm from London specifically, and I would when I'm like ticking forms or when I'm just what I identify as I identify as Black British or Black African. I was born in Zimbabwe, but I grew up in the UK. I've been here since like I've been one, but I do normally push first that I'm Zimbabwean rather than Black British. But in the UK, in terms of how I would like tick. I would tick that I was Black British, so that's how personally I would identify as. And I know it's different for everyone else in this conversation. And yeah, so that's how I kind of define myself as a in tech, in my tech industry, and in general, that's how I define myself as Black British.
Awesome, thanks. And Corey, what are your thoughts?
So for me, I identify as Black or African American. For me, African American is just defined by terms where your ancestors originated from Africa and were brought over or taken from and endured slavery or any other type of kind of like work that they were put to when they came to the country. And so I don't necessarily have an exact place in Africa I can pinpoint, but I definitely identify with my African roots and identify with the African diaspora. So that's how I classify myself. And now I know there are some current terms that are coming up, such as BIPOC or BIWOC, which is Black Indigenous People of Color or Black Indigenous Women of Color. So that's like a new term that people are using because kind of people of color was a little bit too inclusive. It included different groups of women who don't necessarily identify with the struggle of Black women or Indigenous women. And so these are just a few terms that I use interchangeably or when I'm speaking about specific groups in order to not only identify myself, but also identify others. And then I remember, Charmaine, you said there was an acronym that you guys use in the British that is also like coming to the forefront.
Yeah, that's right. So in the UK, we have different ways that we define someone of color so someone of color. So I think in the States, you guys use you do have women, you've heard women of color or person of color, but in the UK as well, we have a term called BAME. So BAME stands for Black, BAME stands for Black, Asian, Minority and Ethnic. So that's like a blanket cover of what someone of color can be. So I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but in other places such as the States, but here in the UK, that's a lot. That's spoken about a lot, being BAME. So that's how a lot of people do sometimes classify themselves if they're Asian, and if they have a certain quota that they need to fill for a company, for example, they'll say that they have hired someone BAME. So it might not be Black, but it would be Asian or minority ethnic. So that's how it is in the UK personally.
Wow, thanks, Charmaine. And it's funny how companies, you mentioned that term and the fact that companies use that to fill their quota, right? So they put us already in a group, and to them, well, I identify you as that, but let's talk about identity and how we identify ourselves, right? And how we navigate that topic of authenticity as a Black woman. So have any of you had to navigate the topic of authenticity as it relates to your Black identity? And if so, would you share your experience?
I'll start. I think with authenticity as far as being a Black person, sometimes it's kind of limited to certain things that we think that society sees from us. So as far as maybe having a certain accent or using certain lingos and colloquialisms and maybe not being in tune to what we would maybe consider white. I know personally I've been called white by family members just on the basis of how I talk, when in actuality, we're not a monolith. It's not just one identity that represents what Black is or what that means. You can be, a complete nerd and still be Black. You can have a totally different experience and grow up, in a predominantly rich neighborhood and still be Black. You could be a gamer and be Black. You could be all these different things and still identify as Black. And so even me going through my journey and just interacting with different peers throughout the different STEM worlds, you realize that we are such a broad people as far as what Blackness looks like and how's that represented in America. And so I think putting these kind of stories in the forefront will for people to realize like we're just like everyone else, but we just happen to have more of a rooted history in our Blackness. And so I think with that authenticity is really just being about yourself. And so if you are yourself and you identify as Black, then that's good enough. You don't have to necessarily know the latest rap songs or be what society wants you to be. You can still be you, still get a PhD, still be a nerd in STEM, still make millions, still do whatever you need to do in order, and still be Black in the United States, because that's how they're going to look at you anyway.
Thanks, Corey. Anyone else?
Hi, Corey, I love what you said. I actually relate a lot to authenticity in terms of the way you speak. Sometimes, actually, I've gotten a lot that, oh, you don't sound Black enough, or they'll call you an Oreo. I don't know if you've heard that one, where it's like you're Black on the outside, white on the inside because of how you sound. Or in my specific case, my name kind of gives it away that people will say, oh, you're not Black or African, so you can't like identify as Black, or just certain things like that. So once I learned to stop having to explain my Blackness, because I already know that Black women are always under a microscope. So once I've learned to stop having to explain it and just accept that I am Black, I have the Black experience, I have the Black woman experience, then I've become a lot more at peace with myself.
I'd definitely like to add to that. So for those that are new, I identify as Afro-Latina. My father's side, we're Central American, coming from Nicaragua, and then my mom is Puerto Rican and Black. And a lot of my experience, especially being born in New York City and being raised there for a good chunk of my life, I was used to seeing a lot of Black people who also identified as Afro-Latina. They never, like, there was no option of taking off your Blackness. They were Black, but they were also Latino. And moving down to South Florida, I felt, or pressured actually, to choose one. Either you're Black or you're Spanish, or you're not Latino enough because you don't speak Spanish, or you're not Latino enough because your mom's Black. So for me, I grew up kind of confused and not feeling enough in either category. But then also understanding as I got older that I do have a Black experience, and I've never once not acknowledged that I am Black, because I can look at my mother, I'm Black. Look at my aunts that raised me, I'm Black. And I have a Black experience. It may be different from other people's, but it's still an experience of a Black woman.
Yeah, I feel as if I've heard that story before where, you're Afro-Latina, or for me, I'm Afro-Caribbean, right? But when people feel as if they can identify with two different streams, and you get that pressure to choose one, and you shouldn't have to choose one, right? Because you can identify with both. Because you walk into a room, Camille, and somebody is going to say, oh, here's a Black woman, and you can walk into a different room and they're going to say something else, right? And I really commend you, especially as you've gotten older, to identify, where you fall in and how you feel as an Afro-Latina.
And it's funny because even on our census, it's an either or type of situation.
Right.
It's like you can't be Hispanic, Latino, and Black at the same time.
So it's almost like, well, one year I'm this, one year I'm that. That is crazy to me, right? And so it goes back to the system, where the system doesn't even want us to be who we are, right? Mm-hmm. So Camille, just to follow up on that, what are things you do now that help you connect with your heritage?
So for me, I would say food, and this is maybe like a cop-out, but for me, for our culture, food is such a big thing. Like even down to in Puerto Rico, we have pasteles, which is like a kind of like a meat, it's wrapped in plantain leaves. It's made with masa, which is made from plátanos, and it actually stems from Africa. So it's like honoring both at the same time. So I love making those during the holidays. Now I'm learning Spanish. For a good chunk of my life, I never spoke Spanish. I was afraid of how I sounded. So now I'm taking ownership of, like, not just because it's good to know in society, but because it's like, hey, I'm a Latina. I'm proud, and I may not sound like a standard Latina when I speak, but I'm still going to speak it. So that's kind of two ways that I definitely honor my tradition, and also just making note of like the stories within my family. You know, growing up with a large Afro-Puerto Rican family, you know, we're very rooted in our culture, from the religion to the way that we speak, the way that we foster a community around us. So those are, I feel, the biggest ways that I can honor my tradition.
I love that. And there's so many similarities to me. You know, food is a big thing for me, and Corey knows this because she's been around my family, and we love some good Trini food, and that's the way that I connect. And Corey, you want to add on that?
Love it.
Yes.
Well, when we do carnival, if I've never done carnival, you need to do it. It literally will be the best time you will ever have in your life. But a lot of it is like fresh fish. I know your mom made us like a fresh salad one time, corn soup. Oh, that was really good. Roti. Doubles isn't really my thing, but I know everyone goes crazy for doubles. It looks like a baby's diaper, but hey, whatever. It's good to some people, I guess. But in general, it's just the richness in the food. And you can see a lot of the connections, at least for me, because I've tried African food, of course, like African-American soul food. And there's still like connections between each dish, no matter how different the origins are, from either using rice or, being cognizant of the animal and different parts of the animals, like just different things that kind of connect us all. But I will say Trinity food is definitely really good. I can't wait to go again.
Listen, roti has my heart and soul. Okay,
Serious.
My life has changed when I had it.
It's lovely.
I'll invite all of you to Virginia next time when we're all open, and I'll make you guys some roti. Okay, that is funny. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about life as a Black woman, because especially in the past few weeks, I think we've all had that roller coaster of emotions, right? With what's going on in the news cycle, what happened to George Floyd, what happened to Breonna Taylor, and countless others. And it's interesting because the light is finally being shown on what life is like as a Black individual in the United States. So, what is it like to be Black for you, and how has your experience or perspective changed over the course of your life? And Charmaine, do you want to kick us off with this one?
Yeah, so growing up, I feel like everyone else, you're just naive. You're just like, oh my God, I'm just a girl. At the end of the day, my skin color doesn't really define me, but I know like my culture and all that kind of stuff does. So just growing up, I just knew, I was I was just a Black child. I had a mixture of friends from different nationalities. Even though I would say my area is predominantly Caucasian, but it's very multicultural. There was different people from different walks of life. And then when I was going into like my teenagehood, I would say that's when it kind of dawned on me that what the kind of struggles that I could face and will face in the future. And I'm not sure on everyone else, but I think everyone's mom or dad had like that kind of conversation where like, you might have to work this amount of times harder, just to be seen. You could be perceived as this, you can be perceived as that, but just you need to understand and know who you are. And as the years went on, I just saw that happening. So going to university, and thankfully my parents were very open with like the course I could study and what I was, because I've always loved science, and science was always my thing. So I already knew, and my parents were very, very open to say, you can learn whatever you want. And then it was like when I actually went into the corporate field, where you kind of see, okay, this is kind of where, this is where the struggles really, really start, in terms of like, the little microaggressions, if you change your hair, or the little comments which just don't, they just don't sit well with you. Like there was sometimes there'll be situations where, someone will say to me, or like a colleague will think it's okay to be like, oh yeah, like I'm from this country, and the country that they were referring to they were referring to it pre-colonization. So it was like, oh, like it's just certain things about your hair, you need to change your hair, and then sometimes it's just exhausting, like being just like, oh my God, I just want to go to work and get my work done and go home and not having to face all of these things. But as a Black woman, you kind of know, okay, how am I going to react to it? On top of that, am I going to react to it in a in an aggressive manner, but I know how that will be perceived as an angry Black woman. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people have been growing up to know that, okay, if you shout as a Black woman, if you shout or you actively speak up against something, you might seem aggressive. You might seem, okay, you're becoming a bit hostile, even though you're in your way, well in your right to, you know, be angry and be outraged, but you have to handle it in a certain different way. And it's just navigating and understanding and knowing that. And as I've grown up, and especially in my current career and in technology and being a tech advocate, I've realized what I want to do in terms of bringing people, Black women that are not in the industry to be in the technology industry, and not just it being a white male dominated era industry, which it is right now. So just trying to push people, Black women, to STEM, and knowing the different possibilities that you can go into, because I feel like sometimes women, Black women especially, and we're just told that you can do certain jobs, which isn't on really.
And I think I just want to follow up a little bit, especially about my Black experience. So I'm a first generation student from two military parents. And so my mom's from Arizona, my dad's from Tennessee. So there's like a countryside, and there's just this other side that they're different from each other. And so being in the military or having military parents and traveling, we were around people from all different types of cultures, religions, backgrounds, races. So it wasn't like a huge thing that I noticed as a child being a Black girl. And it wasn't really pointed out to me until I think I got to college. And when I went to an HBCU and noticing that, wow, there's so many of us from so many different countries. And instead of just being like an African American, I now have Caribbean friends. I now have African friends. I now have, people that I normally wouldn't have necessarily been in contact with as being in the military and moving around a lot within the United States. And so I think the huge disparities you start to see did really come to the forefront until I got to grad school. And so going from HBCU to a PWI, then you're like, whoa, it really is just me, or it's only a few of us. And we have these certain things that bond us, and people don't really understand. So now why are people all of a sudden talking about my hair like it's a big thing? Or why is all of a sudden people talking about the way I said something? Like, it was a shock for me. And then I just realized then within that Black experience, like just how it can change based on your perceptions and who you're around. And then the higher up you go in education, the more and more you stand out, and the more and more you have to realize, like, okay, my experience as a Black woman is going to be different. It's not going to be the same. People aren't always going to recognize what's happening and recognize what's going on in my life and feel like it's important. Like even before George Floyd or anyone that was killed, while I was in grad school, we had Michael Brown, and I still had to go to lab, and I still had to do experiments, and I still had to work my way through that kind of pain, versus now I think people are trying to take more notice of that. And so I think now my Blackness stands out a little bit more, and I'm even more proud to be like, yes, I'm a Black woman. I don't care if you think I'm angry. I don't care if you think I have attitude anymore, because at the end of the day, you're going to think it anyway, no matter what I say. So I think that journey has definitely propelled me into being even more of an advocate and more of understanding of a Black person's plight, regardless of where they came from or where they're going. So I think that definitely has changed since I was a kid, and I just can't wait to see what more can happen and what more I can advocate for. I mean, I'm per se a heterosexual woman, but even LGBTQ rights, that's something that, I'm starting to become way more aware of, just as being a Black woman. So again, everything, it kind of just changes and growth and changes what we need in order to get what needs to happen and change in this country.
Yeah, that's so true, Corey, and thanks for saying that. And I just want to point out, take a quick pause before we move forward. For those who are live, I know you noticed we lost Ambenda, so they have a power outage where she's at. So let's just hope she can pop back on and continue the discussion with us. But as we continue to talk about that Black experience, and Corey, you mentioned culture shock, and then Shaman, you mentioned that racial discrimination. When we think about racial discrimination against the community, and the national attention it has gathered, stemming from police brutality to the killing of George Floyd, right, to Breonna Taylor, to Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others. Mike Brown, you mentioned, Corey, when we were in grad school. what are your thoughts on this topic on police brutality and racism against the African American Black community? And I'll definitely start with how I feel, because this isn't new. It's it seems new to the news cycle now, or we have a news cycle and then it dies down, and then people, the rest of the world, the non-black world, they go about their lives, right? But we still suffer the pain, and something else happens and it may not be caught on camera, because everything else that has happened, there's a body camera or somebody spoke up. But when we as a community, as a black community, we don't speak up, then it's not acknowledged. So police brutality isn't new. And I was actually reading an article yesterday about a retired police chief from Detroit, and he talked about his experience as a teenager walking home in the 1950s. And this was a couple of years, I think, after Emmett Till. And he said he was walking home, and these four white cops stopped him and they beat him up really badly, and then sent him on his way. So it's been happening then, and every decade we just see it now. Things are getting recorded, but it's not just racism when it comes to police brutality, right? It's a systemic thing. It's in our healthcare systems. It's where we live, where we have food deserts, right? Because, oh, well, you live a certain way, so you can't have certain stores. You live in a certain location. It's when you're trying to buy a house. It's when you're trying to get a loan. It's in education. It's in industry when you're trying to get a promotion. So it's across the board. And I've had this conversation, with my manager about my experiences, and he was surprised, right, that it is so prominent even in our generation. And like, it hasn't changed. It's just people have gotten better at hiding how they feel. So what are your thoughts about that, and just the discrimination against the black community right now?
I'll go. So it's just tiring and it's so confusing when people feel like that it hasn't stopped. So when they miraculously thought that because they passed a law that they cannot, trade slaves, or like slavery was abolished, and everyone was free, that everything else just followed through and everyone's fine, and this racial discrimination doesn't happen. And it's just ridiculous. And I feel like because people are born into this privilege and this not understanding, they just think that's how the world is. They don't acknowledge it's set up for you to win and for us to be oppressed. So it sounds, sometimes you really have to stop and be like, okay, look, this is systematic. It's not just about, okay, I'm being racially discriminated against. Like, people are dying. It's scary to even walk out of your house because you never know what you'd be subjected to. People are going to prison for things that are not true. People can call the police and just say, because you're black and you're threatening, and you can go, you can go into prison for that. You could be locked up for the rest of your life. It's just crazy. Like, I don't even want to start with how many black women in general can go into the hospital and say, that they're experiencing some sort of pain or some sort of health issue, and it's overlooked. And it's crazy because people are dying because of this. It's not just because, we want to be a victim. It's not that. We just want to be equal, and it's not. I'm not sure if people are a bit afraid of that, to see where people would be if we're all equal, and what the what the level playing field will look like. I think that's why, because some people are benefiting off this oppression, and some people will have to realize that maybe you're average, maybe there's other people as well that are on your level, and it's interrupting people's money, it's interrupting people's life, being able to live. People's dads, fathers, uncles, sisters, brothers, daughters are being killed on a regular, and it's just not on. And it's just about us making these black spaces. So I was really happy that Engineering Girls asked us to come together and being able to push this advocacy in STEM, because that's also an area where black people, do you know what I mean, where you at, where is it? I'm not sure if we're not being discriminated against in terms of us being just women in general, and then on top of us being black. And it's just it's crazy. And what's been happening in the world is just disgusting. And I live in the UK, so I have a different experience to what you guys experience in the US. But the UK is not innocent, and it's really not. And they try and pretend they are, but they're not. And we've had to, you know, protest and go out and show these people and show the UK, like, UK, you're not innocent. You're, if anything, you're just the daughter of a spawn. So from the US. But yeah, it's just heartbreaking, really, and it's draining and it's exhausting as well. If anything, it's heartbreaking, really. It's heartbreaking. Forget all the anger. It's just heartbreaking, if anything.
Yeah,
I would like
completely agree.
No, go ahead, Corey. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I hear that a lot, and especially off of this recent LinkedIn post that I made, and how people were coming after me talking about why, because it was a dedication to everyone before me on how I got my degree, and even to what's happening now as far as the killings, and even though that's not news now. And so a lot of people took my dedication and made it political and made it into me creating more of a racial divide by recognizing my past. And so I've noticed and I've heard a lot of comments about Black people playing and being victims. And, you know, my parents came, they immigrated here and they were able to do the XYZ, and my parents were able to do this. And so you guys should be able to do the same. First of all, your parents were, yes, they were able to get here, but they didn't have the same barriers that we have. We had Tulsa, Oklahoma. You guys decided to blow that up. We had Rosewood. You guys decided to blow that up too, and, you know, dismantle that system. Every time we try to create Black wealth in these Black wealth systems, they get dismantled or they get destroyed because of white supremacy and white jealousy. And so I'm surprised nothing's happened to Atlanta yet. You know, just as many Black people, or DC, just as many Black people that live there and are trying to create that kind of wealth. And so when you come with these barriers that you constantly have to overcome, and when you create these systems of wealth and then people want to come and dismantle them, it becomes extremely hard for you to see people progress and do things that you want or that you can do. And so I constantly tell people, like, it's not as easy as just making a choice and doing better when you literally have barriers put in front of you that will not allow you to succeed. And so my parents weren't given visas to come over here and be doctors. They weren't given access to this country and told to participate in a healthcare system, versus in our own Black community, they won't even allow sometimes us to be doctors. And they put barriers, again, for us to not reach those goals. And people don't see that. They don't do their research to understand that. And even me, as getting far as I don't have anyone in my family that has a PhD. I do have some college educated people, and my cousins and aunts and whatnot, but no one has gone as far because it just hasn't been done. It hasn't been seen in my family. Versus if I talk to my counterparts, my white counterparts or Asian, they have parents who have PhDs and have these degrees and work in these industries. And so they just have different opportunities than I have. And so when they say we want to play the victim, that is complete opposite of what is true. We have all these beautiful Black African-American inventors, and they don't even get recognized for their inventions as far as the GPS, the lawnmower, like just the traffic light. We don't even get recognized for those. And Black people are smart, enduring, imaginative, creative folks. But every time we try to do that, it gets taken away from us. And so we constantly have these barriers that you have to fight over. It's just another thing that you have to go through, another, worry you have to put on. And so I just hate when people say that. And I just want to clarify, we are nobody's victim. If anything, we're each other's heroes, and we will continue to be moving forward and always. And so that's just what I have to say about that.
I would definitely like to chime in. Sorry, Charmaine, when you said that this whole thing is draining, it is draining because we are not that far removed from everything that we have been put through as a people. Like you were saying, Malika, for instance, I have a longtime family member. He is a police officer, NYPD. He's one of the 12 police officers that sued for racist quotas. Suit thrown out. I have family members who have served in the armed forces, have come back and have been racially profiled in Texas, have had SWAT called in their homes for nothing. And I'm talking nuclear Black family. And it's crazy to think that we could do so much for this country, but anytime that we try to, we're removed. And things are taken away from us. And the amount of times I've had to explain what white privilege is, and to be battled back, well, you guys have affirmative action, or you guys get better scholarships. And it's like, we get that to try to minutely level the playing field between you guys. And then something that I'm also battling right now with fellow Latinos who honestly are disregarding this. And it's kind of coming from a scarcity mindset that honestly was put upon us by colonizers saying that, well, if the Black people have it bad, then you won't have it as bad. And that's wrong, period. That's wrong. If we fight this fight together, regardless if you're an Afro-Latina, regardless if you're a white passing Latina or a Black person, Asian person, if you're a minority like at all, this is your fight too, because this is something that you still experience. It might not have been through a system that has been designed to oppress us for hundreds of years, but you are still oppressed. And this is your fight. And you need to fight for equality, and you need to educate the people of their privilege and how they can advocate for, whether it's women of color, people of color, however you want to cut it, they need to advocate for us and get us into the room.
That is so true, Camille. And I really appreciate you saying that. And people just need to speak up, right? And we need to have those allies so that we can have a voice together, but we need to be in the room. And as Shaman said, it's tiring. It's tiring sometimes to be in this space, especially as a Black woman in STEM or Black STEM influencer. It could be tiring because you feel as if you are the one you have to have the voice for other people in STEM who don't get that voice or they don't have that opportunity. So let's talk about our experiences as Black STEM influencers in the tech STEM community. I know for me, one of the reasons I went down this path is because of my experience in grad school. Corey said it before. We went to a PWI, predominantly white institution, and I was only the second Black woman to graduate with a PhD in mechanical engineering from that school in the history. And to me, that was in 2016, and that was crazy. So it was hard enough just being the only Black woman in my cohort. But then as I went through every year, it just got harder and harder to climb that mountain. And it was really a struggle. And I felt as if, listen, I can't have anybody who's coming after me go through what I did. I need to have a voice for them. And I need to make sure that as a Black woman, they understand that the impossible is possible, because you're surrounded by people who don't look like you, and they make it seem like it's impossible because you're the only one. And it's so important for us as influencers to continue to use our voice, especially as we go through our different industries. I know, like Charmaine and Camille, you guys working in the industry, so you understand that experience when we walk into a room and we're the only person who looks like us, and we have the eyes, and even if we're in the room, sometimes we don't even get the voice, right? And it's up to us to speak up so that it's not a continuous thing, and it's not something that we kind of, when it comes to, okay, you just sit and you add to the diversity but don't say anything. So what are your thoughts? And I saw we had Amanda, but I think we lost her again. I was just gonna ask
We lost her. But she will always rise. She will always rise, right? She'll come back.
She'll come back.
Yeah. So I guess Corey, as a Black STEM influencer, what is your experience in the tech STEM community? And I know
That's all I am. People keep saying that, STEM influencer, but I think as just being a Black woman in STEM that has some type of recognition in this social media world, I would say initially it was still kind of segregated. I felt white influencers or other influencers that were non-Black that had larger platforms didn't really interact a lot with the Black STEM influencers as much as they are now. I felt like it was kind of isolating, but it has gotten better. I think the more Malika, you come up, Charmaine, Camille, you guys have come up and people are more willing to, interact with you. But I think in the beginning, it was definitely a little bit more segregated than I personally would have liked. And so I think it took time for me not only talk to and interact with other accounts and seeing that they're willing to highlight and support me, for me to be kind of more open and being on platforms and sharing with them from things that they would send me or I would send them. It kind of took time because we're familiar with, each other, right? And we're more willing to interact with each other. And it's hard to do with people of other races. But I think, especially after what's happened recently, I done gained a whole new white following. I'm like, look, y'all, this really ain't for y'all. I'm doing it for Black women. But if y'all want to participate, you want to see and you want to support, by all means, I'm here for you. And so I think that started to change as far as on a social media platform. Now, as far as like in the STEM community, being kind of more recognized, like, my PI, when he said at the beginning of my defense, Corey gets more likes and shares than I do. And I'm like, oh, okay, so he watches what I do too. Or some people coming up to me and be like, hey, are you Team Corey? I follow you, I do this, I do that, or we should connect here. Like even at BNBS, I definitely had a few people come up to me and ask just based on my platform. And so when I started it, I wasn't really thinking that that was going to be the end goal. I was just showing my experiences and showing what a scientist looks like and what that can entail, from going to Carnival, wearing a bathing suit in the middle of the street, to going to conferences and being suited and booted. So it just depended on how, I felt that day and how we just have different stories and different perspectives. And now I just see how much it's grown and how much, I guess, of a influence I may have. And I just love it. I really am an introvert and kind of a shy person, even though most people don't think I am. But it really has kind of gotten me out of my shell, even in the STEM community, to speak up for, other injustices and things that are going on, and also being more confident in how I even like present myself in the STEM community, as far as like my research, or when we're in journal clubs, or even talking to professors. I have more confidence when doing that, just because of my interactions, or writing down my posts, writing down my thoughts and my feelings. And so I think overall my experience has been good. And if anything, I just want to make it better for the next person that's behind me.
I'd like to chime in. So I and it's funny, I don't even think of myself as an influencer anyway. The role that I like to take in really propping up Black women in STEM is more of a community local based position. So a lot of what I do is I try to use whatever marketing skills I have, or like the knowledge of certain technologies or campaigns, to really push for like local organizations. I was one of the founding members of Get It Girl, which is an organization based down in South Florida. Prior to that, I was also with Tech Lauderdale, which is a tech organization rooted in Fort Lauderdale. And really my main purpose is like, hey, if I'm allowed in the room, because some people think that I'm just straight Hispanic and that I'm passable enough and that I'm the diversity they need. Okay, bring me in the room and I'm going to get other people in the room too. And I'm going to give particularly Black people the advice that they need. Like that was honestly my thing. I would go, or I would be hosting these career fairs, and I would see just the young Black college students be so timid and fearful and like not know how to approach recruiters. And it's just like, wow, like it just dumbfounded me. And then the people that are running the event aren't helping them. And for me, that's when I'm like, okay, this is what I have to do. Like, this is my purpose. And I may not be an engineer, I may not be a software developer, but it's like, I have a knowledge of tech. I love being within this field. And I do feel that with more diversity in technology, we're going to take away the biases, right? We're going to get more access to things. We're going to have things that are made for us. So that's kind of the role that I like to take.
And I think of that as an influencer. You don't have to have 100,000 followers on Instagram, or what society has defined what influencer is, right? To be an influencer, a STEM influencer, if you're impacting somebody's life, so somebody else who didn't know about STEM knows about STEM, you're influencing, my friend. And that is what I think of when I think of a Black STEM influencer, especially powerful women like y'all. So let's talk about, as we think about our experiences, especially in the STEM community, I want to ask something about unconscious bias. So do you have an unconscious bias, like an internalized stereotype against yourself as a Black woman in the STEM community, especially as you go into those spaces?
Yeah, so I will. So yeah, it's crazy because I went into like my graduate intake, and it was diverse in terms of there was a lot of Black people, but literally I walked in and there was just me and one other Black girl, and we looked at each other like, cool, we're gonna be friends, because there was literally no Black women ever. So sometimes when I'm in the boardroom and I'm working, because I work for consultancy, so we work for have different clients. So when I go into the boardroom and I'm sitting with the developers and the business analysts and the project managers and everyone's like male dominated, and it's just like I don't want to seem that I'm unknowledgeable. Sometimes I have it in my head like, oh, maybe, you just need to quiet down a little bit. You might not have you compared to all these men that have these men who are obviously in the industry and they know their role properly, that maybe I shouldn't be too loud. I shouldn't, voice my opinions, or if I think there's a defect that we can't go live with this defect right now. And it's just like sometimes I have this internalized thing, like you don't want to be the angry loud girl or the angry like Black girl, or you don't want to be too pushy or too much. And it's just tiring sometimes. So I'll be battling that within myself, and I've always had to check myself sometimes where I feel like if someone else, like another woman, is like that and she's unapologetic and she doesn't care, that I don't put my internalized stereotype onto them as well, and be like, oh my god, this girl's so loud. Oh my god, she needs to stop. Or, fair enough, I understand that you need to conduct yourself in different settings and different in different manners, but changing your whole identity and yourself completely because of this just based on a stereotype is just wild to me. And I just feel like sometimes, just like with Camille, I'm not a developer, I'm not an engineer. I don't have like, I'm a newbie in terms of like my coding or my software knowledge, I would say. But as a software analyst, I know what I know. I'm good at what I'm good at what I do, and I do push other people to like, get into the door. And it's sometimes I'm just like, oh, but are you good enough to give that advice? Are you good enough to influence? Are you really a tech babe because you don't do this? And I'm just like, no, I can't do this. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. Internalized, things inside of me and stereotypes, and they're just going to hinder me, and they're only going to stop me progressing and me helping other people progress too. So yeah, it gets like that. But when things have been put on you for a long time, for years, it gets to you, and yeah, you just have to try and block it out, really.
For me, my unconscious bias was very similar to Charmaine, where I just didn't feel intelligent enough. And that actually stemmed from my undergraduate years. Prior to me going into marketing, I have a background in web design. And so I was really excited to try to kind of foray into computer science and get a little bit more technical, maybe even become a UX designer. I wasn't sure. But those beginning years of my education where I was the only woman in the room, I was the only person of color in the room, and just my professors were purposely target me out and make me feel less than. And that's what made me remove myself and then go into marketing instead, which I'm in the place I am now. It's what's meant for me. So I'm happy. But had I not had that experience, who knows what may have happened. But since then, I've been able to really regain a lot of focus and clarity about who I am in my position within technology. And in my last position at a technology firm, I was the person in control of all the marketing. And we would have all these local events where we would have like CEOs from Royal Caribbean, CEOs from Magic Leap, things like that, and the CIOs. And I would go up and just talk to them. And then they would be baffled that I even have the gall. And I'm like, well, you're a regular human like me and you. And I really want to, dig into your mind and understand how you got to where you got to. And funny enough, a lot of these people, they're just regular like you and me. They don't really know that much more. They just had more access than we have. And that's really kind of what made me hone in on like access. Access is like the thing that I need. And I may not have it right now, but I know that there's a way to get it. So I've just been very strategic on aligning myself with people who are open to giving access to others, who are, welcome to diversity of opinions and of people. And that's all I can really do. Now I don't really have an unconscious bias. Sometimes I get like a little imposter syndrome here and there, like, with this new project I have going on at work. We're utilizing a lot of chat and artificial intelligence in our chat tool now. And it's a crazy big project. And I got roped into it. And I'm like, yeah, sure, you want me to do this? I don't think I'm smart enough. And then I had to talk myself out. And it's like, no, Camille, you know your customer base. You know how a chat tool should talk to people. You know the flows and the dialogue that should happen. So it's like, who better than you to take this on?
Yeah, thanks, Camille. And you and Charmaine, you both pulled on that thread, right? That imposter syndrome thread. Because even though you have Charmaine experience talked about her experience with having those internalized stereotypes, and you talked about them, and then also you talked about, well, I also have my imposter syndrome. So it's great that you recognize when you have imposter syndrome, because not many people recognize when they're going through imposter syndrome, right? And for those who may not know what imposter syndrome is, it's that feeling you get when you feel like you're a fraud, or you feel like even though you have you have the background, you have the experience, you have the education, you still go into a room and you think that people are going to feel as if I'm a fraud, or I don't belong here, or I don't know what I'm talking about. And so it really comes back to recognizing when we're going through that. And I've talked about this a lot. Somebody mentioned Nesby in the live comments. So I presented this at National Society of Black Engineers Convention last year, and I was supposed to do it this year, and hopefully we'll do it in August. And going through those exercises of not only recognizing when you're going through imposter syndrome, but how to overcome it. And Camille touched on that a bit, right? Doing those exercises of, I know who I am, I have the experience. You wouldn't be in the position you are in if you didn't have the experience. And you have to dig deep and find that confidence, because I also go through imposter syndrome when I'm asked to present to VPs, or could you do a keynote? I'm like, oh, well, I can do a workshop now, but keynote, that's different, because everybody in one room, let's split up into groups, because I want to feel as if I have more control. So saying, well, I'm the expert in the topic, and that's why I'm being asked to talk about it, or this is my area of expertise in my job, so this is why they want me to present progress to a high, to an audience who has more impact. So this is great. And as we talk about imposter syndrome, I don't know if anybody else wanted to touch on that, or if we should just let's get into microaggressions, right? Because and I think Charmaine, you mentioned it earlier on about some microaggressions when it comes to your hair and your some of your coworkers maybe. So what are microaggressions for people who don't know? And have you experienced microaggressions in the academic space? So this would be towards Corey after. And what are some of the microaggressions that any of you may have experienced?
I feel like how I would define, please don't quote me on my definition of a microaggression, but how I would define like a microaggression is something that is not sometimes not intended to offend. So it just might be a comment, a statement that's derived from like a stereotype. Personally, that's how I would kind of go for how I'd explain a microaggression. For me, a microaggression can go from, being can go from your hair. So if you change your hair, someone might comment, oh, your like not your hair's nice, but oh, what happened to the old hair? What happened? Where's that hair? Did you cut your hair? Did you change? You've changed your hair now. So you dyed your hair? You had another. That's a wig, isn't it? That's a wig. You're wearing a wig. Just little those kind of things that is just irritating, and it's like it derives from either like a racism or a stereotype, which is the most annoying thing, or things that people, I think Corey mentioned this, where people just assume that because you're black you should either sound a certain way, you should act a certain way. Do you fried chicken? Do you eat this? Do you eat that? Do you go to these certain places? Oh, you go to the countryside. Like, oh, I didn't think that was that was the type of thing.
You know Drake? You don't know Drake?
You don't know Drake. Oh, I know. Tupac. I know Tupac. It's just large where it can go from. It can go from food, it can go from hair, it can go from music, and it can tap into everything. And it's just derived from these kind of weird stereotypes that people will have. And don't get me wrong, as people in general have their own stereotypes and of what it means to be black, but it's like, Lord, like I'm just tired. That's why I feel like, when you tell people, yeah, I work in tech, or I work with big systems, and they're like, oh, but that don't. you don't look like you can, you can do that. And like Corey said before, like I can be a hot girl, I can wear makeup, I can, do my hair like this, do like that, and I can still be working and doing big things in the STEM industry. Like, do not get it twisted. Like, whatever your idea of was of a person in STEM, you just need to eradicate it. If you thought it was like a person with a white guy, old white guy in a white coat, and that's the only representations of what an engineer, a mathematician, a scientist, someone in science looks like, but you need to just eradicate it. It's enough. Is I'm just don't get me started. I'm just tired, really. But yeah, those are the things that can pop up in work environment. I'm not sure if people get bored at work that they ask some stupid questions, shade intended. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I think sometimes people like try to make conversation. Sometimes, thank God, in most of like the places I've worked in, all the clients I've had, everyone's multicultural, so no one really intends to offend. But sometimes you have certain colleagues that just don't know. That's just doesn't work. Like making comment. I remember someone had a comment where we had a client and loads of people were in suits, and then the person goes, "Oh, you guys look smart. You're off to court." Like, because it was black boy, it's just black men in suits, and it's like, would you have said that to a white to a group of white guys in the job we're in workplace going? Would you not said, "Oh, are you going to a wedding or you got something?" You said court, and it was just silence. Everyone was so confused where that came from, and it was just like, did you just associate black crime criminal? And then it's like, if you came and you went to go address it, oh no, it was just my idea. It was just my idea. I just thought that, it might have been this, it might have been that. And it's just like, yeah. So that's my experience.
So that's a crazy experience. And the book stuff with the hair, I get it all the time. People still think either it's an extension or wig. So when I change up my hair, I change you change your wig. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Keep it moving.
And I just keep it moving.
Yeah, honestly, diversity. I like same way when you highlight your hair. I don't really like, you've highlighted your hair. That's great. Or you've put extensions, or someone else puts extensions, and it's like, okay, it's great. But why now? Because my hair's changed, or this is that. And don't even think about touching it. Don't even think about touching my hair. So don't even.
I've had admates be like, "Corey, we just don't know what you're gonna come in looking like," and I'm like, "And you will continue not. I might be wearing a bun next week or a ponytail that's down to my butt the next. Like, get used to it, I don't mind. I always tell them, like, yeah, this is just a piece, or no, this is like my actual hair. Because I've definitely had comments, especially like with some of the photos that have been like floating around with my hair being out. People are like, "Oh my gosh, she's gonna burn her hair with a Bunsen burner," or like, "There's so much bacteria living in her hair. Like, I just don't understand like how she can be in a lab." And I'm like, first of all, we don't have open flames in the lab in general, because anybody could get their hair burned, regardless if my hair is an afro or someone has their hair straight in a ponytail. And everyone has some type of germs or bacteria in their hair. I mean, that's just life in general. So why is mine so different? Just because it's a different curl pattern, or it's a little bit more curly. And so these are like some things we have to like explain. I definitely don't do the whole touching of the hair. My hair's only been touched by like unsolicited by like drunk people. And so I have to do a quick, but in the lab, in a professional environment, yeah, you don't touch me. I don't touch you. Don't touch my hair. And so just having kind of like that standard set. So when we do talk about it, or we're about to talk about Corey's hair, I'm just going to let you guys know that we can talk about it intelligently, and you can ask your questions. I will definitely answer, but we're not about to sit here and be ignorant either. And so I don't mind doing that. But even with like microaggressions, that's just like one form. It's just talking about your hair. I mean, micro in front is just more of like a slight, and it's on a micro level. So it's between you and another person, versus like institutional or departmentally. That's a whole nother ball game. But I've even had certain comments such as like, "Oh, well, you went to a black school, slighting my education." Or even I've had other friends people are discounting their degrees because they went to a HBCU. And it's just like, just because I went to an all black school, maybe they didn't have the same resources that your school had, doesn't necessarily mean that I come from a less qualified background. In fact, I might even more. Instead of me having like a Bunsen burner ready to go, I might have had to start a fire from scratch. You don't know that. You don't know what skills I have. So watch it. Or even just like telling jokes, racially insensitive jokes. And so initially it's hard to check these microaggressions when they happen to you initially, just because you're not sure as far as what your response should be, as far as like not having that angry Black woman stereotype and what that kind of will, the consequence or the repercussions will be. But now, oh honey, you say something to me about anything microaggression related, I'm gonna come for you, because I've just honed the skill at this point, and I'm gonna come at you nice, nasty, and I'm gonna make you look stupid while you're doing it. So if you want to ask me a dumb question, I'm about to ask you one right back. And so we can just have this nice little dialogue until you realize, okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should have thought more into what that meant. Like with your court example, are you guys going to court? So, sir, why would you think we're going to court? Like, please explain to me. So you didn't think we're going to a wedding? Are you going to court? Oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just, after a while, you learn not to be so offensive and just like kind of like start to stand up and take action for yourself. And that comes with time. It doesn't happen overnight, but I feel like addressing it in the moment, or not always even addressing it in the moment, it's okay to step away, process what that person has said, and then come back to them like, I didn't appreciate what you just said to me. I think it was very, racially charged or sexually, motivated or discriminatory. And this is how moving forward, how we should talk to each other, or send the email, or follow up with an advisor. Like, there's just certain things you can do now instead of just being like caught in this kind of like mode of, oh my God, this person just said this to me. Like, I'm offended, I'm hurt, and I want to cuss them out, but I can't. And so after a while, you'll find those kind of outlets in order and how to deal with microaggressions. And again, it's always a learning battle for me, because I either want to like cuss somebody out, or I want to be silent, but eventually you'll start to learn to, stand up more for yourself and address these people in the moment, and do it in such a witty way that people are like, okay, don't mess with court, respect. I'm not going to say that again to her, or I'm going to be more intelligent when I speak.
Yeah. And as we increase, and as we have those conversations, or you, as you said, you kind of give the comment back and you try to understand where they're coming from, right? Because you want to make sure you check them so they don't go check somebody else. But Camille, I know you had something to add too.
Yeah, building onto Corey and Charmaine's points, I feel like microaggressions can come from either two sources. It can be out of ignorance, so but you just choosing not to respect my boundaries or me as a person, or just sheer uneducated, like they're uneducated about things. And so based on the person you're interacting, you kind of gauge if they're coming from a place of ignorance, or if they're coming from a place of, hey, they might need to be educated a little bit more. And as much as right now I'm exhausted in educating people, that's just what's going to have to be done in order for us to get where we need to get. So, I've had a lot of microaggressions my whole life, especially, being Afro-Latina. So it's like, oh, you're not Black enough, or like, oh, you're sure pretty light, or your hair is so big, I can't see. Or it's like you're being loud or expressive. In Puerto Rico, people talk with their hands a lot. We're very expressive people. Sometimes we just have like our emotions just there, which I just conveyed right now. My name not being Spanish enough. So I actually have a pretty European sounding name. There was one time in college where the professor was calling names, and he said Maria and looked directly at me. And I'm like, do you think my name is Maria? He's like, yes. And I'm like, no, my name is Camille. Look all the way in the bottom of the list, starts with a V. And so it's like, I try to come for them nasty, nice, nasty, like Corey says, and come to them educated. But if somebody is coming to like, oh, why don't you straighten your hair? And it's like, all right, I don't straighten my hair because I prefer my hair to be natural. And, I come to them from a place of education, like, hey, it's not nice to ask people when they're going to straighten their hair, or if they ever, or how long their hair is. That's really not for you to know unless they feel comfortable for them to tell you. So I think
I got hang time. We all got hang time. Okay.
Chill. Like, I'm not going to straighten my hair to appease you. Okay. It's not happening. Or to be professional. People assuming I speak Spanish. So there was one job where a client came in and he was speaking Spanish, and they directly looked at me, and I'm like, the boss knows Spanish. I don't know Spanish. Like, I don't speak it well enough. So you're looking at the wrong person. So it's just understanding the place that they're coming from, and then kind of gauging that and saying, okay, how is my response going to be? Do I need to educate, or do I need to snap back?
Right. And knowing that, and making sure that education happens. And I think as we increase Black representation within the STEM community, then that education is going to happen less and less, right? Because people are going to know when to stand down and when not to act out. So I know for me, when I think about how we can increase that Black representation, it's not just about getting people in the door, it's about the pipeline and making sure we retain people in the STEM community. Because you get into the community and then you're so overwhelmed, you're so tired, you feel as if you have to go through so much after you did everything you had to do, right, with the education and getting to that point, you get into academia, you get into industry, and it's another battle. And one of the things I know that I've been trying to do with my job, and even with the community, around me, is reminding people we could get people in the door, but then when I look at the top, I want to make sure I see representation in myself. So how do we get people from the door to the top, to the VP level, to the director level, right? So something in the system, something in the pipeline is broken. And that can only happen if we have allies, if we have people who are willing to empower people of color, empower Black people, empower Black women, empower Black men so that they can take it to the next level. Because as soon as we walk into the door, already we are judged because of the color of our skin. So even though two people, one person who's non-black and someone who's a person of color, their resumes are exactly the same, they're gonna give it to the person who's the non-black just because the unconscious bias, as we've talked about before, right? So it's a matter of making sure that people are aware of that unconscious bias. They are aware of the fact that we need to take a chance, take a risk, help the pipeline, pull people up, give people the opportunity to lead. And us as a Black community, and I think Camille, you said this where earlier you were talking about, you work with local groups to help students kind of make sure their resumes are touched up, make sure they're ready when it comes to career fairs. We who are the influencers now, we have to make sure that our people are taken care of. So let me show you, let me help you get that job. Let me make sure that you're well polished so that they have nothing to say. So that when you get into the STEM community, you're not just stuck at the bottom, but you're moving on up. So, what are some other ways you guys think we can increase Black representation when it comes to the STEM community?
Well, I think Malika, you do a really good job of that by reviewing a lot of essays for free. Personal statements, I think sometimes can hold certain groups and people back. And the fact that you offer that as a free service definitely is something that's needed for people of color when they are applying to grad school. I've helped Malika like once or twice, but in general, in my own free time, and even when I was like the LSAM grad coordinator at Cornell University, I would go with undergrads and I would go over their statements and I would go over their resumes and whatever they were applying to and cater it towards that. And so I think helping people identify how they need to express themselves for a particular job or a position definitely helps with getting more representation of us in STEM. So what people are looking for, like with my awards, as far as like NSF, like I've definitely looked at a few NSF applications and research statements. And I'm like, this is, they're really focused on service. You need to highlight your service part. You need to talk about this. You need to tell a story. Don't start off with, this is why I always wanted to be a scientist. Everyone probably starts off with that. I hope not anymore, but you got to tell something that's unique and specific to you. And don't discount your story because it's not like someone else's story. You have something to say and you bring something to the table. And so I think having those conversations individually with people definitely helps with like bridging that gap in that pipeline, and also seeing representation at the top. So my PI for my PhD program was half white, half Japanese, but he was an ally in sorts in connecting me to my current postdoc position where it's a Nigerian woman. So having a Nigerian woman that I am taking instruction under has now moved me to a postdoc. And y'all, because I was not considering a postdoc, I was considering going industry, but knowing that I see another face that looks like me and that understands my struggle pushed me to go more in towards that direction and kind of keep going in this track. I mean, I don't know if I'll end up as a full professor or anything, but to actually have that is very comforting and pushing people more towards these different levels in higher education or in different levels within industry or pharmacy or wherever route that you want to go to.
Yeah, I'm literally Corey and Malika, you guys are amazing in the fact that you guys have got your PhDs in the first place, because like it's crazy, because representation does matter. And the fact that Camille has gone into these places and says, okay, let's, you guys are not being looked after properly, let me push you, this is how you can get to A and B, is amazing. Because I feel like there's pressure on us, because I don't want to be average, because if I'm average, I can't be average, because I don't want the future generation to see me and be like, oh, Charmaine was able to get to this, this pay, this is where I can only go to. Do you know what I mean? I would want to be as best as I can and tell people, look, you can be myself and, even better, and go into, bigger roles, like what Malika was saying about, you want to see the people in these big roles being director, being, managing director, being on the board where the decisions are being made. And it's literally about like working with organizations such as like the organizations Camille works with, and Malika yourself, like being able to be nice enough to review all these, personal statements. And Corey, that you were given that Nigerian professor that was able to, you were able to look and be like, okay, this Nigerian professor, she got there, like sis got there, so I'm able to get there. And I'm so happy that there's so many platforms, even if they're not like Black themselves, such as Engineering Girls were lovely enough to, they're women of color, but they're not, they're not Black, but they understood what was going on and said, okay, look, we need to push that out there. And them doing that and making sure, like, okay, like we need to make sure that representation and diversity is shown in this industry is amazing. So I couldn't get enough of all these different Black women in tech, just pushing people in tech pages, following me, and push, because we need it, like it's important. And just being the best you can as well, because you want people to look at you and being like, oh my God, she's a doctor, oh my God, she's working at a big marketing firm, she's working with this, she's doing that. And it's really important to do that. So I feel like that's important in the STEM industry. I wouldn't say, I feel weird saying this, not praising mediocrity, but like really praising what's happening and being able to be like, okay, you guys are there, you guys are doing your thing, and pushing more people and opening the door for other people to like follow you and be like, okay, you can be me and more. And yeah, that's what I really think, to be fair.
I'd like to chime in, and as you guys mentioned, getting in the door, that's a hard part, but I firmly believe that the hardest part is staying in there. As we see, there's a vast amount of Black entrepreneurs and Black companies, but why do you think that is? It's because they don't feel valued, they don't feel safe, they don't feel as if they are growing in the big corporations that they're a part of. So I think the problem really stems there, that people, their career trajectory is getting bottlenecked in these organizations, likely due to oppression, likely due to them just not getting advocated for the way that they need to. So I firmly believe that a lot of organizations should take, or create mentorship programs, affinity groups, those type of things, so that way they know, like people like Black women or Black people or people of color in general know that their voices are being heard, that they are being taken care of, that they are growing, and not just left to some online advancement program. Hey, take a couple leadership trainings, just to do it. It's not really going to advance you in any way. So I think that those are the prime ways that we can do it, and whether that's advocating for each other and saying, hey, I'm going to take you under my wing and I'm going to show you the company and kind of like what's good about it and kind of let you know what how you can succeed around here. I think those are like the important things to do within the STEM community.
Yeah, that's so true.
I also think I just wanted to recognize people in pages who have been doing this since they started the pages. So as far as like Black Girls Guide to Grad School, Black Women PhDs, Black Male PhDs, STEM Noir, Women Doing Science, Black Scientists Matter, like these are definitely platforms that have always put and shown the representation within different fields of STEM, not just one. And even like Réseau Doctor, Dr. Tribe, like these are just ones I'm just naming off the top of my head from like Instagram that I see. But there have definitely been efforts that have been ongoing to increase the representation of Black and Indigenous women, men of color. And it's great that it's being pushed more to the forefront on other platforms that maybe are not geared towards Black people specifically, but there are definitely platforms before us that have been doing this since they've been started. And even going back to just different organizations such as the NAACP or fraternities, sororities, we've always pushed for this representation of different facets of Black people within just the world in general. So I do just want to say that.
Yeah, Corey, thanks for that, because it's really important to have communities like those, right, to support us and our efforts. And as we think about communities, other communities like Engineering Gals, it's or women doing science, for example, it's really important that these communities not just push, women in STEM, but push representation when it comes to women in STEM, or push representation when it comes to men in STEM. Um, because we want to be able to show diversity, and diversity isn't just, well, a switch in gender. Diversity is showing that they're different shades, that they're people of color, indigenous people, right? Latinas, Caribbean people, Black people from the UK, British. So there is a wide range, a spectrum, and it's really important that we have platforms like this one who can lift and shine a light, have that spotlight on us, on people of color. So how else do you ladies think a community like Engineering Gals can support you or support the efforts that we've been doing? I know I probably said the exact answer. So don't feel pressured.
Um, One thing that I like that particularly Engineering Girls has been doing based on the amount of time I've been following them is just lending the stories element and allowing takeovers. I think it gives more visibility to other people. I don't know if you guys have seen the Share the Mic campaign, where a lot of white women were giving women of color, or particularly Black women, allowing them to take over their social media for the day. I think that that's a great way to really rein in a different audience that probably wouldn't necessarily recognize what you go through or be educated about what we are trying to do. So I think that that's a great tactic.
That's so true. Thanks, Camille. And I know we talk about so much today, and as we kind of wind down and we reflect on our journeys through STEM, our journeys within the fields that we're in as Black women, as women of color. Let's think about some of the struggles and challenges we faced, right? So, what are some of those that you faced, and what advice would you give to your younger self now?
Um, I would probably tell myself a couple things, such as not letting myself get boxed into one thing, being afraid to let my freak flag fly in terms of being fully nerdy, um, being able to not allow what other people thought about my decisions or my interests affect what I do in my life, not allowing people who I think have power over me, such as professors, to influence my choices and make me give up things easily, and also to have the confidence to walk into any room regardless of who's in it, because at the end of the day, they crap the same way we do. I don't know how else to say it, but they're literally just like us. You know, just find something that is a commonality, and you can strike up a conversation with anybody. So I think just confidence all around is something that I've struggled with, and confidence definitely affects areas of life such as your education, your career, your personal relationships. And had I not struggled with confidence as much in all those arenas, who knows where I might have been able to go. So, I definitely try to embed that in other people, like have confidence, like be confident in who you are and what you have to offer the world.
Yeah, literally. For me, I had exactly the same kind of like thing with Camille, where it was just a lot like a lot of things. And so going from, you know, neuroscience to technology, and it was kind of like, okay, but you know, you don't really know a lot about the industry, and you're new to it and everything. And obviously whilst I was university, so like I said, I model and I blog, and it was kind of like you can be everything that you want to be. So I know a lot of the times, loads of people thought that I was pursuing going to doing my degree because, you know, your mom and dad told you have to go to university, and it was like, oh no, I like neuroscience, I like I like cognitive and clinical neuroscience, I like everything about it. And I should have just like loved the fact that I was just understanding myself and doing things that I liked. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, not knowing the destination of the end outcome, not knowing that, you know, it will come in my third year that maybe I wanted to go into technology. And when I did, and it's like, okay, so people are like, oh, you work 9 to 5 because, you know, you're trying to do this, but, you know, you really want to be a model. I'm like, oh no, I like my day job too. And it's like I can be whoever I want. Like, I know loads of you guys do different, you know, amongst working in STEM, you guys do different things as well. And it was just combining the two and understanding that was my brand, that was my identity all this time, and all I needed to do was be myself. And I thought that was just a struggle. Like, I was doing too much of the software analyst, doing too much of the tech, it was just a lot. And I was just like, why don't I just relax and just be myself and be confident in who I am? And like tomorrow, like in a couple of years time, I might not be who I am now, but as long as I'm pushing who I am right now is just what's important. That's what I would say to my younger self. Just be yourself, really. Things will work out for itself, really. You find out on the ways during the years what you like, what you don't like, and being confident, and not feeling like you're missing something, if that makes sense as well. That's what I would kind of say to my younger self.
Yes, so no, that makes perfect sense. And as you say, you know, push what you want, be who you are, and really almost be a self advocate, right, for yourself, to yourself. And so, how important is self advocacy, and what are some of the ways you have done it for yourself? And I'm going to ask Corey to answer this one.
Well, heard both Camille and Charmaine talk about confidence, and so I feel like confidence stems a lot from self advocacy. So knowing who you are, B, what you need, and then C, how you get what you need. And so I feel like once you can like narrow down these three, being confident will come so naturally to you, and you'll be able to advocate for yourself in arenas and on platforms that you may not have been before. So getting to your true core identity, and this goes back to our talk about, you know, authenticity. What does that look like for you? Who are you? What is your ethos or your brand? And how can you authentically stick to that? Because people can sniff out bullshit. Excuse my language, but they can sense when you're not being authentic and not being true to yourself. So what are ways that you can actually do that? Is that through exploring different avenues in STEM or personally? What is your, you know, self-care routine look like? What can I do to be better at such and such activity? Or how can I get more confidence in this? Do I need to study harder? Need to study more? What are my interests? What do I like? What I don't like? So the more you know yourself, the more you can advocate for what you want, because you know, okay, I don't like that. I like this. This is what I want. This is what it is. And so, and then knowing what you need. So in order for me to be happy in this STEM realm, I need X, Y, and Z. And we can talk about relationships. That's a whole nother talk. But in a relationship, this is what I need in order to be happy and, you know, to sustain this and keep it going. And then this is how I'm going to advocate for it. So for instance, for me, like when I'm advocating for myself and talking to my PI or talking to someone else, I always come up with lists or reasons why I deserve something. And so when you have these reasons and you have these lists and you have actually proven data to back up, like we normally do as scientists, then you're able to advocate more for yourself and do it in an easier way. And so then you'll start to become like the most confident person in the world, because you literally will not put up with anybody's degradations or standards that are lower than your own. And again, that will come and be reflected as time comes along, because everything doesn't happen overnight. But I think once you kind of learn and hone these skills, it'll make you better, not only an advocate for yourself, but also for other people. And it also starts at the K through 12 level. We have to start showing and teaching young girls at this level, like, hey, you don't have to deal with this certain type of treatment. You can advocate for yourself even if you're 8 years old, or if you're 16, or if you're 30 or 40. And so these are the things I think we kind of had to do in order to kind of not only retain people in STEM, but also to give more confidence to people of color, Black, Indigenous women, Asian, Indian, minorities, so that way we can rise in these different types of levels and also just thrive and also bring other people up with us. Because if I advocated for myself and I was able to get it, then there's no reason why you can either. And so that's just one way I think in terms of advocacy we can do better on. And that does definitely help me with as far as like getting different things and negotiating and being more confident within that.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. And it's so important, right, to advocate for yourself, especially as people of color, because you'd be surprised when you advocate for yourself, somebody's listening. If you don't say anything, then how are you going to get to the next step? You have to say something. And
Hungry mouths don't get fed.
Right,
exactly, whose mouths will get,
right.
like, oh, well, I don't want to say anything because I don't know. No, you
Girl, you
have
gotta say something.
exactly, because trust me, when it's time for that review, I know when it's time for that review. My colleague, man, sometimes I'm like, "Who? Where do you work?" Because I know you don't work next to me. The way he talking about himself, so it's important to self advocate. But I think as people of color, we're so resilient, especially as Black women, and people really don't understand the things we have to do and the journey we have to take to get to where we are. Apart from doing that self advocacy and all the other things we talked about. So, what should people know about being a Black woman? And I like this question because I actually I reposted a piece that I wrote. It was my very first blog piece on a Black Girl's Guide to Grad School. And I actually posted it on Medium this week. And it's called A Mile in Our Shoes. And it talks about my experiences as a Black woman in STEM, my experiences as a Black woman in graduate school, and how I feel people perceive me as a Black woman and what I think as a Black woman. And then I sign it by unapologetic Black woman with a PhD, which I just love, right? So, what would you like people to know about Black women and about being Black that doesn't often get talked about? So, I know I spoke about the resiliency part.
I think specifically for me is I know we have that kind of like moniker of like Black girl magic, we can do anything. We're, like these alchemists, we can make something out of nothing, and we have all this power and this strength. But honey, we is tired. We are, we can only be so strong. The world on our shoulders, it's like we can take on a lot, but at the same time, we need a break. And so having, self-care, I just read an article that was also on Medium that a PhD student was talking about how self-care can actually be one of the biggest, political statements that you can do. Take time to rest. Take time to get your thoughts together. Take time to take a mental break and, assess where your mental space is. Because I think once we're rested and we don't feel like we always have to take on the world, we can do so much more, not only for ourselves, but also for each other. And so I think that, yes, we can carry this many burdens, even other people's burdens, but at the same time, we need to check in with self first and realize that we can only do so much and only be so much of an advocate, even, for other people. But we have to take care of ourselves first. And so I think sometimes that isn't always something that is preached among Black women, even from like a young age. But you have to realize you have to take rest. You have to take some mental peace and find some clarity in order to do better for yourself and also for other people. And so I think, again, another thing that just doesn't always get talked about a lot, as I said earlier, is we're not a monolith. We are a variety of people, come from a variety of backgrounds, variety of experiences. And that's what this world is about. If we all came from the same type of place, same thing, it would just be so banal and boring. So we're so different from beginning to end, from my grandmother to me. We're just different Black women with different stories and experiences. And so I just hope people know moving forward not to classify us into or prejudice us into one type of specific box, because we're all so different. And that's the beauty of being, in this world and on this planet for sure.
What I'd like to add, and just because literally you took the word out of my mouth with us being expected to carry so many burdens. But what I would like to discuss that, as Black women, we know that this afflicts us, but to other people, they may not know that we are not taken care of at a massive health standard. When we're in pain, our pain is disregarded, just being told we're emotional about our pain. Reproductive rights, not even Serena Williams was able to get good service, and she's a freaking multimillionaire. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that in Puerto Rico, the first birth control studies were done there. So that means a lot of women in Puerto Rico were made infertile just to get, just because they thought that their pain wasn't worth anything. And so I would just really want people to advocate for Black women health, period. Whether it's mental health, our reproductive health, heart problems. There's been a surprising, a crazy amount of women that study that are afflicted by cardiovascular problems right now. And I just really want people to advocate for our health, because that's something that the standard needs to be higher for us.
Yeah, thanks, Camille. And I see Mbanda is back, and we are just talking about reflections, right? So I actually want to have you answer this question. What would you like people to know about Black women or about being Black that doesn't often get taught about?
Okay, sure. Yeah, sorry, LA had a blackout, so I was feeling like an Amish person waiting for the power to come back on here. But something that I really want people to know about Black women is that people don't listen to us. I feel like Black women are constantly on the forefront of every battle, yet we're still the most unheard group. Just like Malcolm X says, a Black woman is the most disrespected person in America. So I really hope that, especially with this conversation, especially with our diversity, our backgrounds, you guys are so amazing, by the way. I truly hope that it's going to open the door for people to just start listening to us more, start listening to the people who are always the loudest, but are just in the back.
I agree. We advocate for us and everybody around us, but nobody does the advocating for us. As you can even see right now with Breonna Taylor, that story is being stifled by the other stories. And this is a Black woman, Sandra Bland, same thing. Multiple Black women who have suffered from police brutality, our voices aren't heard. But when we try to amplify the killings of other people, whether they are Black men or other people of color, we're heard suddenly. So yeah. I think the same respect is owed. Fight for us the way that we fight for you.
Yeah, we really try and push, especially with Black men, any injustice that happened, we're always pushing, we're always talking, we're always speaking. And just like what you're saying, Breonna Taylor was killed because that's what she was murdered. Sorry. We really had to make sure, Breonna's laws wouldn't be passed if it wasn't for, us shouting and being like, look, there's women as well that have been gone. There's little children. There's women that have, that have gone through what she's gone through. And same with the UK, we have to push that. Okay, this is what happened. We had a situation with a child called Shukri Abdi, where she was not things weren't investigated properly. And we're just we have to really shout. And if we don't do that, then we'll just be put into the back lines, and it's just no, we're just tired. And yeah, being a Black woman, you really have to push yourself, or no one's going to push you. It's as a community, we always have to push each other up, and we've been pushing other people as well, and we'll still be getting left behind. So yeah, it's a thing we're actively trying to change.
So Charmaine, those sounds like some great next steps, right? So as we wrap up, this is the last thing I think I want us to touch on in terms of what's next. We have to continue speaking up. We have to continue having that voice. We have to say it loud, right? Because if we don't do it, no one else will. And I think each one of you touched on that as Corey talked about being that advocate, not just for yourself, but everybody around you. And I think for me, that's a next step. And Camille actually highlighted one of the next steps I'm doing with my job, Camille. So you talked about having that pipeline within the industry and making sure people could be retained, right? And giving them those opportunities and having those mentorship programs making sure that they get the opportunity to network, maybe to have assignments. So that's one of the things that I've been working on with my affinity group within my job, making sure that we create a mentorship program for people who are thinking of leaving STEM for them to stay, as well as early career individuals to have that mentorship opportunity and have assignments. So I really hope that we see a difference and we see people moving through the pipeline so that the leadership of any tech company, any STEM company, it looks a lot different than it looks right now. So what are some of the next steps that you ladies are going to take?
So one thing that is, we're accusing a lot of companies of just giving us lip service right now in regards to what they're pledging to do for Black lives. Hold them accountable. I think that's like the one main step that we could do. Hold them accountable. Hold them to their shit. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the, but that's really what we need to do. And also encourage them to build like more affinity programs, more mentorship programs within their organizations, and keep holding them to that standard. And that's, I think the key word in this is don't stop. Like, this is not a fad. This is not a trend. Please do not go out there protesting just, for 2 weeks later. This is not a thing to you. This is our lives that's at stake. So hold them accountable.
That's so important. And Charmaine?
Yeah, definitely. Hold them accountable, and yeah, just keep. I feel like it's gone are the days where we just try to, just be accustomed to what it is and be like, okay, it's what it is. Black people, black women, we're just gonna be put into the side. It's okay. I'll just try and be laugh at the jokes. No, like one of the days, if I'm offended, you'll hear about it, and we'll have a whole little discussion, and I'll make HR sit down and talk to you and tell you why what you said was unacceptable. Like Corey said, nasty nice. I'm gonna take that. I've just been too long. People have been suffering for too much. From my grandma, from my mum, and now it's gonna stop. I feel like it takes us and something for me in 2020. I don't know. Something's shifted. I don't know. God's done something there where I feel like things are going to start changing. It's too much. So right now, I'm just really happy that people are being checked and people need to understand what's been going on. And being with you amazing ladies and this, organization, engineering gals, we're taking the correct steps to do that. We're trying to change the front. We're discussing, we're talking, we're making strategies, and yeah, just education is one of them, because we know that's what ignorance is, a lack of knowledge. And so that's where we're changing, and just having identity and knowing where to excel, the resources I need. So if I know I'm a black woman or I knew a black woman that came to me and says, oh, I really want a PhD, how am I, I don't know if this is right for me, I'll be able to say, okay, go to Corey, go to PhD, go to Malika, she's a doctor, these people are amazing what they do, they'll be able to, help you out. So it's about us being who we are as well, and, doing, if I want to be a software engineer, I want to be a full stack developer, or want to go into marketing and digital marketing, then you have people like Mabendo, you have Camille, to because they do what they do and they're good at what they do. So it's just about being yourself really, and being the best you can as a black woman as well, to set the bar as well. I feel like just being open to that and being open to help others.
Yeah, sharing the resources and lifting each other up. That's what it's about, right? We're a community. It doesn't have to be one person. We're all in this together, and we just have to create a community that where people feel like they belong. So this has been amazing, and I could talk all day, but I know it's Saturday, and it's nice outside. But I really appreciate you ladies taking the time, and I know I had a great time, and I want to thank the folks who are live, all of you. I've been looking at your comments, so thank you for engaging. Thank you for joining us. Please check out the link in the bio for resources. Please follow everybody on social media or look us up to learn more about our journeys. Share your takeaway from this event and tag Engineering Gals in your story, and let us know how you took action within your community, within STEM, whether you donated, signed a petition, whether you held someone accountable, as Camille said, or you contacted your governmental authorities based on everything that's been going on within the US and the world. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, ladies. And have a great Saturday. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Malika Grayson. I am a STEM advocate, engineer, speaker, and writer.
White, white, wipe it down. White, 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 wipe it down. White, 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 wipe it down. White, wipe it down. White, wipe it down. White, white, white.